Hello everybody, this is Ethan with WiseCrack Studios, and today I wanted to go over a very simple idea that should make quite a difference in all of your recordings and all of your productions in general. To put it as simply as possible, make sure that all of your equipment is working correctly before you start. Now, what do I mean by this? Now, at its simplest form, this can be even so far as make sure that the computer you're recording with works. If it doesn't work, you're not going to be able to record. Make sure that your interface works. If it doesn't work, you're not going to be able to record. Now, this can get a little bit more specific as you get into things. In some cases, you want to make sure that your guitars are in tune. You want to make sure that the singer for a song knows the words to the song, etc., etc., etc. Make sure that everything works before you start. Now, just to give you an idea of how simple this can be, before everything kind of shut down, I was working on this song here with a group, and we recorded the bass part, I put it on a crunchy amplifier, and what we ended up with was something like this. It's pretty simple, but it's very effective. The one thing is, if you pay attention, it's not that crunchy. When I plugged in my own bass guitar later, it was significantly crunchier, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure out what was going on. I ended up trying to work with this as though it were the crunch tone that I had been looking for, but it didn't quite work. So whenever things started settling down again, I had that band come back and re-record the track, and it ended up sounding a little something more like this. Now you may be noticing, that's quite the difference in tone. Now, I only went through and tweaked the actual amp settings on this very slightly. Primarily, I pulled some of the mids down a little bit just to get a little bit less pick sound. What happened in that in-between time was, between the two recordings, the bass player had changed out the 9-volt battery attached to his bass guitar. Now, for people that don't know this is actually very important knowledge. There are some guitars, and bass guitars especially, that use what are called active pickups. The idea is they have a small electrical current constantly running through them. And while most guitars have what would be known as passive pickups that pick up their electrical current from the amplifier they're plugged into, guitars and basses with active pickups will have a little spot on them where you plug in an actual 9-volt battery so that they can keep a more powerful charge going through the pickups all the time. Now you see, what happened was with the original session over here, those batteries were running dry. That 9-volt battery was almost completely out of power, and sometime during all of the in-between, the bass player had figured out the 9-volt battery was dead, I'm not getting a signal from my bass, I need to change out this battery. So then whenever we brought it back and did this session, it has so much more power and energy behind it, similar to the tests that we had done playing around with that bass guitar before we even started recording. Now, the difference on this is pretty extreme. Whenever you're listening to it in this context, let me just go ahead and back and forth this a little bit. Now, the difference between these two sessions is actually pretty extreme whenever you put it into context, so let me go ahead and play this for you real quick, and I'll switch between the two just to give you an idea. I've already done my best to go through and volume match the original and new takes, so theoretically they shouldn't be too drastically different just based on that. So theoretically you shouldn't have an inclination one way or the other based purely on volume, so it's all going to be about tone at this point.
Truth, oh, give me death. Change my
Like I said originally, make sure that everything works before you start. In this case, all that we had to do was change a battery in order to get a much better bass tone. I've had it happen before where we were recording a bass guitar that the intonation was wrong, and when the bass player tried to go very high up on the bass, immediately every note is out of tune. And I've even had it before where my computer decided to restart during the middle of a recording session. Luckily, we had saved within the last 5 minutes, but if we hadn't, we would have lost hours of work. Now, just as a little favor for me, go ahead and leave a comment down below if you want to tell any stories about any recording studio mishaps you may have had. And as always, this has been Ethan with WiseCrack Studios, and I hope that you have a lovely day.